I hope you understood how electrodes are selected in the first place. Carbon steel to carbon steel to stainless steel, or different grade of stainless steel to another stainless steel grades. Now, once electrode or the filler is chosen, you have to validate the welding joint. One of the reason is welding is considered to be a special process. What is a special process? The final property cannot be actually known. For example, once you have done the welding, which is now the joint is completed, you really don't know what is the tensile property, what is the tensile strength. Some of the properties can be checked. For example, you can check hardness. Visually, you can see whether the weld is of acceptable quality. Is there any porosity, crack, or otherwise? But you will not know what is the tensile strength, which is the most important factor defining a weld, which is one of the most important property for the welded joint or the yield point. So can you leave it to chance? No. Therefore, you qualify the process, we call it welding procedure specification. So when you select the electrode or the filler, you perform a welding joint, you perform a welding procedure qualification test. In that, what happens? You join two plates, for example, or even you can use two pipes. So interestingly, pipe and the plate both can be used for welding procedure qualification. It is not an essential variable. In other words, you can qualify a procedure using plates or pipes as convenient to you, as per ASME Section 9, of course. Now, once you have these, the WPS to be qualified, you prepare the joints and use the electrode within the recommended parameter. For example, voltage, travel speed, and the current, which is given by the electrode manufacturer. And the polarity, of course, and that will also come from the electrode classification. So using those variables, which we call essential variable, where you cannot change those parameters, which will impact the quality of final deposit or the properties, are called essential variables. So within those variables, keeping those variables in mind, you are preparing the welded joint. Once the joint is prepared, then you will cut samples from them. Reduced section tensile strength, then side bend, root bend. This is what is done for procedure qualification. So for the pipes, there are locations specified from where you have to select the sample for plate welding when plates are used for procedure qualification. If pipes are used for qualification, where you select the sample from pipes. So I will show you now. Once you have selected the electrodes, then you prepare a proposed WPS where you decide what is the type of joint going to be. It's a single V or double V, single bevel, thickness, and all those based on the proposed parameters. You prepare a joint, you perform a welding, look at the weld quality is acceptable, because you don't want to because you have to make sure at the time of testing mechanical properties, there is no welding defect that can be the causal factor for the failure of the joint, because otherwise you feel the material combination is not acceptable. The defect may come from the weld defect produced by the welder. So you have to make sure from the sample which will be tested for procedure qualification, there is no defect. So you make sure there's an X-ray or test done to make sure that the joint not have any problem, and then it is tested. As I said, reduced section tensile test, 2 sample, side bend, face bend, side bend, face bend. So 4 bend test, 2 side bend, 2 root bends, and 2 reduced section tensile test. These are done and the testing is performed to make sure the minimum requirement for the electrode specification as well as the plate meets the requirement. Once this is done, it's a validated process. We call it, then you keep all those records. We call it procedure qualification records. So procedure qualification records, which is basically the test records, will support the proposed WPS. So the WPS becomes a validated procedure. And very important and interesting fact is, and naturally the welder who did interesting is, and what is important is, and that's how the welding joint will be qualified. And the welder who did the welding for the procedure qualification also gets qualified as a welder once the WPS is qualified. Because if he has not done the right joint, how the joint itself would have been qualified. So procedure qualification test can qualify the welder who did the procedure qualification welding. I will show you now how the samples are taken from pipes and plates. Once you have identified the electrode or the filler, you need to qualify the selection by a WPS, which is called welding procedure specification. Now, why you need to perform this WPS qualification? See, welding is a special process. Like casting is a special process. Welding is essentially a casting process. Now, once you have performed the welding, you really don't know certain properties. What is the tensile strength, for example? What is the yield point, for example? Certain properties you can check. For example, dimension, the physical appearance, visual appearance, you can check, but the property cannot be tested. Chemical composition can also be tested, but the mechanical properties cannot be. And you cannot leave it to chance. So you have to validate beyond doubt that this electrode and this combination is the right electrode combination and the welding is going to stay. It's going to produce desired property so that this will be fit for the purpose. This will be able to take the load for which the welded joint is designed for. So how this is done? You are going to take 2 plates. For example, if one is carbon steel, one is SS, and you are going to use a 309 ER or E309L electrode. You have chosen that for dissimilar steel. You are going to use this electrode within the recommended parameters such as voltage, current, and travel speed, polarity, etc., etc., whatever is recommended specification and the group joint for the welding. And then once it is done, you are going to take samples from the coupon that you have welded for procedure qualification. Both plates and pipes can be used for procedure qualification. Say you are using pipes, for example, for procedure qualification. So from the cross section, this is how you are going to take from the top. You are going to take a reduced section tensile test. You are going to take 2 reduced section tensile test samples, 2 root bends and 2 face bends. So where you are going to take from? Here it is at the top, reduced section tensile strength. Then you are going to take side bend from this location. Again, another side bend you can take if the thickness is beyond certain level. Otherwise, you can take root bend, face bend, and then reduced section tensile test, root bend, face bend. This is how it is chosen. So the location for the samples would be from the top. Say this is the welded joint you have done. So, and this is how the cross section is going to look like. So you are going to take reduced section tensile test sample from here. So reduced section will be here, and the weld will be subjected to test. If you reduce this, the failure is most likely going to happen in the welded joint. Even if it doesn't fail, if the failure happens in the plate, which shows the weld is strong enough, this plate failed or the pipe failed, the weld did not fail, this is also acceptable. But by reducing, you are making possibility that the weld should fail. So you take one reduced section tensile test sample from the top and one from the overhead position, from this position. And from here you take phase bend, root bend, phase bend, root bend. Root bend means root will be in tension. Phase bend means phase will be in tension. So you take two root bend, two phase bend, and two reduced section tensile test. Beyond a certain thickness, where it is possible, instead of phase bend and root bend, you can do side bend test as well. It's also possible. So this is how samples are taken, and Sharpie test samples are taken from here, from this location. Sharpie test samples will be taken. From there, you perform the test and then qualify the procedure. Now, I will show you if it is a plate from where you take these samples. I'm going to show you where you take sample for tensile test and root band and phase band when it is a plate sample welded for the test. So here it is. First, you are going to discard the ends because there may be some defects at the start and stop point. So you remove some part, discard this, and then you make a reduced section tensile test sample from here, and then root band, phase band, root band, phase band, and then another reduced section tensile test, and then discard the ends again. So if this was the weld joint prepared, a single V, and this joint was welded, from there, this plate, you make two reduced section tensile test, two root band and two phase band samples. For the thicker plates, you can take side bends and side bends from here instead of root or phase bend, and reduced section tensile test can come in between. So this is how the samples will be tested, and once they meet the requirement of the plate, the procedure is qualified. So the electrode that you have selected is also validated to be the right electrode. I hope you understood it now, the full story, how electrodes are selected or the fillers are also selected. One thing again, electrodes are having flux coating which contains alloying elements. So the deposit chemistry can be significantly different, and that is where all those dilutions and all these things are important. But when it comes to TIG welding, gas tungsten arc welding, which is done at a much lower voltage and current, the transfer does not affect the chemistry much. So the filler where that is used, the chemistry and the final deposit chemistry remains almost same. I hope this discussion, including selection of electrodes for similar material, for dissimilar material, as well as validating them by welding procedure qualification, is clear to you. One thing is, those records of the test, once you keep, these are called procedure qualification records. So procedure qualification record would include tensile test sample, bend test samples, Sharpie test samples, hardness, and all that. And one thing is important, the welder who did the welding for procedure qualification also gets qualified, because if he or she was not qualified, how he or she has produced the joint which got qualified. So the first welder can get qualified based on the procedure qualification itself. Subsequent qualification of the welders are done based on the approved procedure. That's the rule for welders qualification.